to From the Sickbed, a podcast on all things disability, queerness, and more. I'm Sun.
And I'm Lavender. And from our sick beds to yours, we welcome you to join us and get comfy as you listen in.
Let's get started with today's episode topic, which is shame, specifically in regards to shame and disability and how they intertwine for, I would say, most disabled people, if not all disabled people.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to start with the definition?
Yeah.
The official definition of shame?
I have the definition of shame that I Googled that is from the Oxford Dictionary. But
I got the same one.
Nice. So it says that shame is a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior.
First, what do you think of that definition?
I think it's interesting that they called it painful.
Yeah.
I guess shame can be painful, but I see it more as that humiliation and distress part in that definition.
Mm-hmm.
The pain part I thought was an interesting phrasing. What do you think of this definition?
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing when I first read it. I was like, painful. It's an interesting way to describe it. Yeah, I don't know if I don't think I would describe it as painful.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, the humiliation and stress definitely tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I think also the last part, like by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior, I feel like for me, I would add not that what I did was wrong or foolish, but that other people will see it as wrong or foolish, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I maybe would add on a little like extra part of a sentence that says, caused by the consciousness of wrong or foolish behavior as determined by societal norms. That's how I kind of see it, because we can feel shame even for things that are not morally wrong. In fact, they may be objectively good things that you do that we are shame for and feel shame for because society's norms go against that, and our society is imperfect, to say the least.
Yeah. Even just like regular human things
Right.
that have been deemed as shameful for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like of all the emotions that you could feel, I feel like shame is very socially driven.
Mm-hmm.
Very socially driven emotion, feeling.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah, and I think it really stems from the fact that we are social creatures and that our survival does depend on each other, both historically, evolutionarily, even in today's society. Like people need each other, we need each other. And I think that shame, for better or worse, is a tool to discourage certain sets of behaviors that maybe go against the group. And as I said, that could be good or bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you have your own definition that you wanted to
I was
share?
just going to say, when I read it, I tried to rewrite it in my own perspective. It's still very similar, but I just chose different words. I wrote a negative or critical view of oneself caused by embarrassment or insecurity. And I just remembered I did want to add more to it, but like I couldn't think at the time. So I was like, I'll just leave it at that and come back to it. But yeah, I would definitely add the part that you said about, I forget how you worded it, but like as deemed by society or something like that.
Yeah, I think I said it's set by societal norms, but same,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, same concept for sure. May I say that is a very like dictionary quality definition. You really took a very direct interpretation of that, which I think is great. Like that was really good. I was like, that might be better than the
Thank
Oxford
you.
definition.
Let's get this replaced with my definition.
Yes, submit. um,
Yeah.
I think I took a much more poetic approach.
Oh.
Yes, very not direct, not literal, but I was thinking for my definition of shame specifically how shame feels in my body, and that's kind of what I based it off of. So I wrote that shame is hot and grips my chest. It sinks into my belly like a stone. It's hard and jagged and feels heavy. Shame radiates waves of discomfort and uncertainty. It's that feeling of, I am not enough, or maybe I'm too much. It's all of the lies that you know aren't true, but you can't help feeling that creep of doubt, the doubt of what if? What if they're right? What if I am a burden? It's the devil on your shoulder whispering that your deepest fears and insecurities are a reality. It rails against the common measured reasoning of my rational mind to try and undermine my self worth.
Wow. Look at you writing a full on poem. Oh my god. I sound like such a nerd now with my definition.
I love it though. I love how different of an
How
approach.
different they were.
Yes.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought of framing it in a way like that. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's the saying, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. Like I the imagery and like the sensory part of your definition of it, I could like picture it, and like how it
Mhm.
really feels in one of those shameful moments. And yeah,
Mhm.
it was pretty spot on.
Yeah, for
Also, when you first started, for a split second, like I just heard you say shame is hot.
shame is hot.
And then there was like a pause. So I was like, wait, what? Shame is hot. But then you kept going. Just like, okay.
That is hilarious. Make that a soundbite for later.
Shame is hot.
Shame is so
That's
hot.
like those people that have like a humiliation kink.
Yes. Yes. Oh my god. Hey, that's a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was a good
Uh,
laugh.
yeah. But it does feel very visceral when you're in that
Yeah.
feeling of shame. It is a very visceral feeling that is really hard to describe, which is why I wanted to think about how I actually feel when I'm going through it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And your emotions are directly connected to your body, they can cause different sensations and things like that. And the heavy ones, especially. And yeah, shame is definitely a heavy burden, really, to carry or like put on yourself or have put on you. So yeah, I think you described it really well.
Yeah, something else I wrote too as a kind of add-on is that I feel like when you're entering a shame spiral, if you will, I feel like it's often the first thought because it's implicit. It's all the implicit bias of society, norms of society that you internalize. So for me, it feels like a reflex. I don't know if you've heard like
Mm,
the first thought isn't the best thought. I think it's something
yeah.
I heard in therapy or something. But
Yeah, same. I have heard that in therapy.
yeah, so I really feel like shame is one of the emotions that goes along with that, where it might be your first reflex or the first thing that pops in your head for something, but that doesn't make it true. It's just
Yeah.
you're so imprinted to feel certain ways about certain things.
Yeah. I I think when I heard about it, it was being explained to me in terms of like anxiety, but I feel like it can work for so many things. And it was a technique or something that my therapist was trying to get me to do more often. Don't let the first negative thought that pops in your head be the dictating thought. Question it and be like, okay, wait, let's let's see if this is true or not. And like most of the time, they're not true. They're just the things that you've been taught to think about yourself, which is really fucked up. And it takes a lot of effort to not give into those or listen to those thoughts.
Yeah, it's I guess that's one purpose for therapy, right? Is to
Yeah,
like really be more conscious of when you have certain thoughts you should ignore, and the fact that thoughts are just thoughts. They are not facts. They are not truths. They're just things that go through our head, and
yeah,
sometimes they are not the most kind or pleasant or useful things.
yeah. And I feel like in terms of how shame can connect with disability and the different aspects of our disabilities that we might instantly feel bad about. It's all pretty much been set by societal standards, but it's so incredibly difficult to not internalize them. And yeah, I don't know what I'm saying. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that it's just that all the isms in our society are very pervasive, and in this case, referring to ableism, that is something that we are taught from birth. It's something that we are raised with. It's something that we learn our whole lives, and whether you are born disabled or become disabled, you have those things that you have learned, even if not actively, and we do internalize it. It does get absorbed, and it is really hard to unlearn those sort of things, especially things that are more implicit and covert and left unsaid and really pervasive and accepted. Ableism is really accepted in our society too.
Yeah, and it has such a long history.
Yeah.
I when we decided on this topic, I obviously started preparing and started thinking about this more than I regularly do. And I did realize that I didn't think that I felt a lot of shame regarding my disabilities because it's not really like a actively conscious thing
Mm-hmm.
that pops up a lot. It's a lot of subconscious shame going on. You know what I mean? So yeah, it wasn't until I really started thinking about it and just tried to think of different experiences that I could pull from to talk about this. I was kind of a little taken aback by all the things. I'm like, oh shit, I do feel bad about that. And I shouldn't, but I do. And just because you don't consciously focus on those things all the time or analyze them doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that it's not there and it's not eating away at your what's it called, self-confidence, I guess.
Yeah, just your self-esteem, self-consciousness, like your selfhood. I mean,
Mhm.
I think I had the same sort of realization, but I didn't think about it that way. But I was coming up with a lot of different ways I feel shame in regards to disability. And it was surprising because I feel like I'm someone who, in my journey with disability, I've done a lot of unlearning and accepted a
Yeah,
lot around my disabilities, and have gotten to a place where I definitely feel a lot less shame than I used to, and
yeah,
don't actively shame myself for most of these topics we're going to talk about. At the same time, like you said, it's still there. It's still under the surface. I still have those sort of first little quieter thoughts running through my
Yeah.
head in my internal monologue, that is something that I, on some levels, he'll have that narrative of shame within me in all of
Mm-hmm.
these different ways.
Yeah. I feel the same. I feel like I have done a lot of unlearning, and I've also had, I guess, good examples from other disabled people doing the same thing, unlearning that internalized shame. And so I feel like I have gotten better at challenging those thoughts and pushing them away. But
Mm,
yeah, that doesn't mean that it still doesn't happen, and it doesn't mean that it's not just like under the surface. I also feel like maybe a lot of my time is spent trying to avoid thinking of those things. I don't want to actively be thinking about the things that make me feel bad, you know? At the forefront of my mind was like, oh yeah, I've done all this work and I don't struggle with it as much as I used to, but I still struggle with it. I just don't really talk about it or want to think about it.
and even if you are good at having the responding thought of, well, no, it's fine, or no, I don't need to feel bad for that, or fuck that, or whatever your response
Yeah,
is to that like thought running through your head, it's still there. And it is,
yeah,
I think, probably a lifelong battle. Really, I don't think anyone completely ever gets over it. I think we just get better at accepting what we can't change and what we know is something we shouldn't internalize from society. That's really fucked up.
unfortunately, yeah, I think you're right. It's not really something that one day you're just like, oh, I don't feel shame at all anymore. I don't think that ever happens. But yeah, I think the goal is just trying to feel less and less as your life goes on, which takes work and it's hard.
For sure. So, do you want to get into some of the topics or areas we feel shame around in regards to disability?
Yeah. Do you have one that you want to start with?
Mobility aid use is something that jumps out at me.
Okay. Yeah, let's start with that.
So, it's really such a shame. It is a shame. The real shame is that mobility aids are so stigmatized. That is the shame, because they are such wonderful tools that help disabled people in so many ways. I would literally not be able to live my life without my wheelchair. I would not be able to leave the apartment. I would not be able to do 90% of the things I do throughout the day without my wheelchair. And what a beautiful thing that is, to have mobility when your body struggles to be mobile. I mean, it really is as simple as that. Anyone who struggles with their mobility should use a mobility aid if that's what helps them. And yet there's so much stigma around it, and we are oftentimes actively shamed for using mobility aids. And people do see it societally. I mean, because of ableism, they are seen as a shameful thing, as a pity, as bad, as negative, as,
Yeah.
you know, even if you really, like, I didn't choose the wheelchair, but how many people thought I was giving up because started using a wheelchair?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. It's really fucked up. Yeah, I know that this is another topic I thought I had come pretty far with navigating and getting better at, but yeah, it's hard using a mobility aid around other people when you know what the general message is about mobility aids. It's widely acceptable to see them as pitiful or a sign of giving up or failure, even weakness. And yeah, that's something that you pretty much have to brace for every time you leave the house or in the presence of other people, because you know that it's very likely that someone is seeing you and thinking that.
And they don't even have to be consciously thinking it themselves. Again, they could just be really silently judging you without even thinking, like, oh, that poor wheelchair user, that poor disabled person. They wouldn't even say disabled, though, because they don't like to say the word disabled. But
Yeah.
every time I leave the house, I brace myself because I am always gawked at. I am always stared at, no matter where I go, where I am. And oftentimes quite threateningly. It's not a nonchalant type of stare. It is
Mm.
really from some people, especially when my partner is setting up my chair and I'm loading or transferring out of the car. I just get the weirdest stares from people and they won't look away. They won't glance away. I will make eye contact and they're still staring,
Yeah.
like staring hard and just not smiling, not not being like friendly. I know they're probably having all sorts of thoughts or whatever. Not everyone is like that, of course, but there really
Yeah.
is a lot of scrutiny on mobility aid users and wheelchair users. It's like being under a spotlight everywhere you go in a way that
Hmm.
I have never felt previously in my life. It's really hard to describe unless you've experienced it.
Yeah. It like instantly draws attention, whether you're trying to be inconspicuous or not. I make a really big effort to not look at people when I'm out because I don't want to see them staring.
Mm,
Sometimes I do glance around just to see, but I think it's like I'm not even consciously doing it a lot of the times. It's something I think that I naturally do. I'm just like, I'm just going to look where I'm going and I'm not going to look at other people
hmm.
because if someone gives me a bad look, it might ruin my day. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's not just like, being out, going down the sidewalk in your wheelchair or mobility aid either. I feel really self conscious when I'm out and I have trouble fitting into spaces
Hmm.
because they're not made for mobility aid users. There's places where I can barely fit in the doorway, or I'm bumping into corners because the hallways are really narrow. And that's when I feel like even more attention is going to be drawn to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think those moments are when the scrutiny of other people is heightened or just the attention because if you're struggling, they probably notice. And then
Yeah.
your self-consciousness like just all of a sudden being like too aware of the fact that I am in a mobility aid and I don't fit or this environment is inaccessible. It's when that inaccessibility pops up that I feel that sort of instant little flash of shame as if I did something wrong,
Yeah.
even though I didn't do anything wrong. But there is that discomfort and embarrassment and shame that I don't fit here. I don't belong here.
Yeah. Exactly. I feel the same. That immediate thoughts like, I shouldn't be here, or like, I'm not meant to be here, really. Even places where sick people are meant to go, even then, a lot of times I feel like this is not somewhere that I am welcome, or oh my god, I forgot what you said. Like I don't belong
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. That this is reminding me of a time when Yuto had to go to the ER, and I was with him. And I think I told you about when this happened, but I didn't tell you about this specific incident. But he was having gastrointestinal distress. That's why we were there.
Mm-hmm.
He was really unwell. And, we're in a hospital. So you think mobility, the people that are in wheelchairs at a hospital, especially in the ER, all the time, right?
Yeah.
So he was really doing unwell. So they brought him into that little triage room where they talk to you more one on one in a smaller room. I don't know if I think most ERs have
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So they took us into that room and I went with him and they asked if I wanted to come, like I'm going. So I'm in there, but the room was really small.
They're always
And
small. They're so
they're
tiny.
always small. And there's like the blood pressure cuff, there's the chair that he's sitting in, there's the chair for the doctor, and there was barely enough room for me to squeeze in with my wheelchair, but we made it work. I fit in and then closed the door. And of course, it's a very tense environment. It's very chaotic as the ER is usually, and they're asking him questions and he's really not doing well and he's looking very bad. So they're talking fast to get through
Mm-hmm.
the triage. And there were two nurses in there, one taking vitals and the other one giving the sort of interview, asking questions. And the one nurse, she kept flashing me dirty looks whenever my wheelchair would bump into something. And then was really just like for real mean mugging me. She was, I don't know, not happy that I was there. She was clearly
Yeah.
giving some sort of attitude, even though she didn't say anything. And then
Yeah.
when
You can tell.
we were going, you can tell, you just know when someone is being pissy with you. So that's how she was,
Yeah.
and it was only directed towards me. It was obviously like anytime I had to shift in my wheelchair, and I was trying to make myself as quote unquote small as possible and not be in
Yeah.
the way. And this is my partner. I'm here to support him. And then the room has two doors, and they were taking us out the back door because they were giving him a bed and because they needed to get more vitals and tests and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
there was equipment in the way. So I kind of just tried to move it out of the way and like squeeze by. And then again, I kind of bumped into the stand for the blood pressure cuff. And she was just like, she just yanked it out of the way and was like, I think she even scoffed at me.
Oh my God.
And she, like, who knows what was even going through her head or why she was so pissed off, but clearly she thought I shouldn't be there or was taking up too much
Yeah.
space. Like literally,
You're a problem.
I was a problem for her. And it was just, of course, in the time, I'm not making a big deal out of it because I'm worried about my
Yeah.
partner. I'm just there to support him and help him get the care he needs. And I let it go in the moment. But afterwards, I was thinking about it more and I thought, how fucked up is that? This is a healthcare worker.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't the patient, but I am a disabled person there
Yeah.
in a wheelchair. There's plenty of people that come through there in wheelchairs. Do you act like that with everyone, or
Yeah. God, I hope not.
and then people
But
wonder
yeah.
why we feel ashamed. Why do you feel ashamed? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because people literally act like you're in the way and you're a burden.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah. And people wonder why we also don't like or trust medical professionals.
Right.
Because even they see us as a problem a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what a bitch. Yeah, I don't think you told me about that.
Mhm.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you don't think about it till after it's passed and you're just
Mhm.
like, what the fuck was that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
messed up.
I've had I've had some moments like that before, and I feel like a lot of the times it's a mix of anger but also shame,
Mhm.
because it's weird. It's not even that I think that or I believe that I am a problem or I'm in the way or
Mhm.
don't belong, whatever, but like you're made to feel that way. So what else are you gonna feel, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's so shitty.
It's all of those little moments that keep perpetuating that shame that we feel. It reinforces the shame. Those kind of moments are when the shame monster is fed and is like, ooh, what if they're right? You are just in the,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Even if you're not actively thinking that.
And that's a really good example too of like how disabled people, specifically mobility aid users, can be made to feel so bad about themselves without anyone saying a
Not
word.
a word spoken. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, nothing was said directly to you. Not even like get out of the way or you're in the way,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but you could feel that nurse's energy towards you and like her looks, her body language,
Yep.
everything.
Yep. Yep, all of that and the little dagger like side glances, all of that in the moment. And you feel it. We feel it. We know when people are treating us badly, even if they're not saying anything out loud. And the other people in the room, I will say, were not acting that way. So that made it way
That's
more obvious that she had
yeah.
a problem with me.
Mm,
Yeah,
she needs to get a different job. The fuck?
for real.
Like, isn't she supposed to care about people
And
in that profession?
what if I was the patient?
Yeah.
You gonna treat me like that then?
Oh
Damn.
my god.
Hate to be your patient for real.
It's those kinds of nurses that give nurses a bad rap.
Truly.
Yeah. I was trying to think of different instances that I could feel shame or insecurity about my mobility aids. And one of them, you don't even necessarily have to be seeing someone in person
Hmm.
to feel those kinds of things. Like, I thought about how when I'm, talking to family members or I don't know, other people who are like able bodied, they don't get it, they don't use mobility aids. Even if it's people who don't outright say something about it, I still feel self conscious. I don't even want to bring up my wheelchair
Hmm.
because what if someone does make a comment, you know, and that could send me into a spiral? What if someone does say, oh, like, why do you use a wheelchair so much if you can walk? Or,
Hmm.
I don't know, just stupid remarks that can just take you down a notch so quickly.
Yeah. They're like microaggressions. Well, they are microaggressions, right?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be those little innocent seeming comments. I feel like a lot of times in those situations where they don't even have to be outright questioning your right to use a mobility aid.
Mm-hmm.
There's just an implication of like, do you need it that much? Or like,
Yeah.
how much do you need it? I've gotten those sort of questions from family members. Like, how
Mm,
much do you use it? And the underlying implication is, oh, I hope they're not using it too much because that would be
yeah.
bad.
So bad.
So the
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah. Those kinds of comments and way of thinking, they're so pervasive that there's a fear instilled in us.
Hmm.
Even if nothing's going to happen or like this person, maybe you're talking to someone who hasn't said those kinds of things,
Hmm.
but you've heard them before and it could happen again and it's just like, ugh, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to bring up my wheelchair. Don't look at me in my wheelchair.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate because I also don't think people are even aware of those things when they're doing it, when they're saying it,
Hmm.
and they don't realize how much it affects us.
Yeah. I wish instead of people making those kinds of comments, they would make a conscious effort to just be like, oh, I like those stickers or pins that you have on your wheelchair. Or, I don't know, just compliment it. Or just say nothing, too. You could just say nothing.
If you don't
But if
have,
you're going to say something,
yeah,
you like, you know what I mean?
if you don't have anything nice to say, Don't say
Don't
anything
say
at all.
it.
Any non disabled person listening to this, you can assume any disabled person using a mobility aid has done that, probably with so much conflicted feelings and thinking about it and agonizing over it for a long time, to the point that they probably are using it later than they should have. And it's been a decision that they have probably talked about with many people in their lives, probably including their medical
Mm-hmm.
team. And
Yeah.
you think somehow you can be the judge of whether or not it should be used or how much it should be used. And
Yeah.
we are the ones who know our bodies the best. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just so entitled and presumptuous. Like, you really think you know better, and it's very
Yeah.
paternalistic. You really, all non-disabled people somehow think they know better than disabled people about their own bodies.
Yeah. And it's not even any of their business.
It's really not.
Like, like, why is it concerning them? It has nothing to do with them.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to that stigma of mobility aids, that people do see it as inherently negative. They can't look at a mobility aid and see something positive, which, when you're talking about, you know, it's nice when people just give compliments or just say something positive. I think that's part of why I feel I need to really decorate my wheelchair, and not just
Dress
that,
it up.
but dress up. I feel like I need to dress
Yeah.
up myself. I don't want to be looking like the slobby or lazy disabled person. And
Mm-hmm.
I that's part of the shame that comes with my mobility aid too, is I feel like I always have to look good. My wheelchair has to look good. I need to be presentable to gain that acceptance from other people, even though mostly I do that for myself, for my own self-esteem, and because I do enjoy decorating my
Mm-hmm.
wheelchair, and I love being colorful and wearing bright clothes and fun outfits. Yet there
Yeah.
is still a part of me that, if I were to try to just go out in like sweatpants and like a dirty baggy t-shirt, I'd be like, are you sure? What if what if
Mm-hmm.
people judge you?
Yeah. I have gone out like that before. And yeah, it definitely ramps up the self consciousness versus like when I'm wearing a nice skirt and look more put together. Sometimes that's not always possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you know that people are going to be looking, so let's try to look nice so that no
Mhm.
one has shit to say,
Mhm.
which I understand. But then it's also like if people are going to think things or say things about you in a wheelchair, your outfit like probably won't stop them, you know?
Mhm.
If they're that shitty person, even if you look great, they're going to be like, ew, wheelchair.
Yeah.
And they can just fuck off, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, the second thing is what we have to tell ourselves, like, in
Mm-hmm.
response or in preparation. Everyone can
Yeah.
just fuck off. This is my mobility aid. I look how I look. Have you never
Yeah.
seen a wheelchair user in your life? Get over it.
I know, right? Have you been living in a cave?
Hmm. Yeah, so there's a lot with that, and there's just so much.
We can make a whole episode just about that.
Probably we could keep going about mobility aids, but we have other stuff to
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other things that or I have struggled with a lot more in comparison to other sources of shame is hygiene and appearance. Speaking of like looking nice when
Yeah.
you're going out in public, yeah, that's something that is really hard to not feel shame about because there's so many high standards for people in general, but
Hmm.
specifically for disabled people. And there's standards that for the most part just cannot be met or can't be met all the time.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's one that I have worked on trying to unlearn these things, those instinctual negative thoughts, but they still happen. They're still there. And yeah, just
Yeah.
something we could definitely talk about for a long time too.
I think hygiene is a big one that I took for granted before I came disabled, like my ability to keep up with my hygiene and keep myself
Oof, yeah.
clean regularly. And then becoming more and more chronically ill and more disabled, the harder it's gotten over the years. And it it's just on one level, yes, hygiene is important, of course. Keeping your body clean lowers the risk of infection and other skin issues, and of course is something that we need to do. And yet there is so much shame thrown around societally for people who struggle with hygiene, and people do actively shame disabled people who cannot
Yeah.
keep up with their hygiene. And so I think that's probably why it's so difficult for us. It's such a hard one to get over.
Yeah. It's one of those that, like, people are not afraid to be loud about in their
Mhm.
criticisms of disabled people because they think it's true. They think they're right. Like, disabled people who can't keep up with hygiene or can't shower or whatever, they're gross. That they
Mhm.
think it's a fact. And it's so messed up. And I've come across a lot of different disabled people, and I think that's one like universal experience or like struggle that we can all relate with.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's especially hard for people who are bedbound or primarily bedbound, who like can't even
Mhm.
shower. I can't shower,
Mhm.
and it's not something that I really talk about because I know what people probably think about it, you know? Even if they don't mean to, even if they're nice and they want
Yeah.
to be nice about it. It's just one of those things that's like everyone should keep up with their hygiene the same way. And it's just not possible.
Mm-mm. Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. I mean, for anyone who is severely disabled, like you have severe ME, but really anyone who is severely disabled to the point where you are either bedbound or you require a lot of assistance for those kinds of tasks where you cannot shower independently. Like there, whether you can or cannot get into the shower at all, there's some people who need a lot of assistance, a caregiver there to help them bathe
Mm-hmm.
and shower. And if there's not a caregiver there, they cannot shower. And in those ways, it's out of your control. You didn't
Yeah.
choose for your disability to get this point. You didn't choose to be this sick. That is
Yeah.
something that happened out of your control. And you do what you can to maintain your hygiene. And that's it. You do what you can. You do the best you
You
can.
do your
You
best.
do your best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's good enough. It should be seen as good enough. But
Mm-hmm.
people suck. I don't know, like even now I'm feeling self-conscious talking about it
Mm,
more in detail, but I also do want to talk about it because I know there's people who can relate,
mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's helped me to hear other people talk about their struggles with hygiene because it can be a very isolating thing,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're the only disabled person in your household or
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have a caregiver or other people helping you out and they're all able bodied. They cannot relate. And
Mm-hmm.
when you don't have anyone that can relate to you, especially about something so like makes you feel so vulnerable, it can be very lonely.
Yeah. And I think part of that loneliness is the inability to talk about it openly. And like you said, if you are the only disabled person in your inner circle, then you might have no one who can relate to that or who understands. And it reminds me of these videos I've seen where there's hairdressers who, no matter what, will accept clients who have mats all over their head. Not every
Mm.
hairdresser will do something like this. It's very intensive to take someone whose hair has been matted for months and to
Mm-hmm.
cut through it, untangle it, try to preserve the hair as much as possible without just shaving their hair off. And a lot of times, like, when the person has hopefully consented to share their story, the hairdresser might say, like, this person, it happened after they lost a loved one, they were grieving, they fell into
Mm-hmm.
a pit of depression for many many months and couldn't brush their hair. Those are disabilities. Really, I mean, depression is a
Yeah.
disability. Even if you someone is grieving, that could be a temporary disability depending on how intense and how,
Yeah.
how badly they are affected. and
Can't function.
and yeah, they can't function. And I'm sure it happens to people with other disabilities as well. And it's something that, yeah, I think people do feel a lot of shame around. And it shouldn't be shameful to have a human experience. And
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I'm like getting emotional. I don't even know why.
It's
It should
okay.
it shouldn't be shameful to have a human experience and to struggle and to not be able to take care of yourself. That is probably one of the most human things that happens
Mm-hmm.
to people. And it can happen for any number of reasons. One of the biggest ones being disability.
Mm-hmm.
And that shouldn't be shameful. But
Yeah.
we just are really shamed for that, and we absorb it like a sponge even if we aren't intending to.
Yeah. Well, first, I understand you getting emotional, and yeah, I could even feel myself getting closer. Like, it's such a personal struggle. And like you said, it's very human. It's more common than people think,
Mm-hmm.
and yet it's one of the most shamed things that someone can be shamed for, especially like when you're disabled.
Mm-hmm.
And with something so personal like that, you literally can't take care of your body the way you want to, the way you need to.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really, really hard to not weigh on you.
Mm-hmm.
Especially, it's also one of those things that people add morality to.
Yeah.
Like, you could feel like you're not a good person or good enough person,
Mm-hmm.
worthy of care or kindness or love, if you can't keep up with your hygiene. You can't take care of your body the way you need to. And that's something I think, well, I know it has caused a lot of grief over the past 3 years of me being physically disabled and bedbound. It's a really heavy grief
Yeah.
that is, it's hard to wrap your mind around even when you're going through it. This is really my life. I used to shower every day, and now I can't. I just can't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you have to figure out, like, are there different ways that I can take care of myself? And it's never going to be the way, or I won't say never, but for me, the way I'm living right now, I'm never going to be able to do that again. Like, shower by myself every
Mm-hmm.
day. And I have, I think, gotten to a better point of accepting it because it's been a few years already. But in the beginning, or like, if you don't, like, I have someone to help me with cleaning myself. If you don't have someone to
Mm-hmm.
do that, I bet it's 10 times harder to come to accept.
Yeah, and that's a point I kind of wanted to go back to, is that for a lot of disabled people that need a caregiver to bathe and help keep up with hygiene, like that is out of their control. And not every disabled person has the support they need. Not every disabled
Yeah.
person has a caregiver. And even if they do have a caregiver, is that caregiver able to put in the full hours that person needs?
Mm-hmm.
Are they actually getting the amount of support they really need, or are they having to pick and choose what,
Yeah.
you know, things they need support around during those caregiving hours? And it's very
Yeah.
difficult. It's very, very difficult.
And it's also something that can make you feel like you don't even want to ask because it's so personal. It's such a vulnerable position to need help bathing or washing your hair or whatever. That, I don't know. Obviously, it depends on who the caregiver is. If it's a loved one, if
Hmm.
it's someone you hired, whatever. Either way, I feel like there are moments where you're just like, I don't want to bother them with this. This is hard work
Hmm.
and I'm uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's something that I really did have to consciously like tell myself. And I think maybe I also asked Michael, my partner. Sometimes I do tell him if I need verbal confirmation or validation
Yeah.
because he's the one doing it. And I think in, oh God,
Mm.
I think in the beginning when it came to that,
Hmm.
like, I don't know, I think I remember the first time because he gives me sponge baths in bed. I was putting it off because it just seemed like too much. And like maybe if I wait longer, maybe I'll be able to get into the shower, which in my house there's no accessible shower. Like it's hard to get into one.
It's dangerous
So,
even for you.
and it's dangerous, yeah. So asking someone to do that specifically, this is my partner, and of course he was up for it, but it's not something that I would ever want him to have to do, like take responsibility for.
Yeah.
And yeah, it it was really hard. And I did also feel really uncomfortable because I'm just laying there. Like I'm naked, I'm just laying here
Hmm.
getting scrubbed down and I'm just like it's such a different way to live
Yeah.
and also such a different way to have a relationship with someone. It's so intimate. It's so intimate.
And vulnerable.
Um, yeah. And thankfully, it has gotten easier. I think for me and for him, at first, it's like, hey, how do I give someone a sponge bath? You know?
Yeah, true.
Um, and before, it's just like, ugh, like I want to cover up. I don't like being seen in this position, but it does get easier. But I don't think it'll ever be like I enjoy this. You know, I'll always have that thought. I hope I can shower again one day.
Hmm.
I hope I get to that point, or I hope we can get an accessible shower in here, something like that, because
Hmm.
yeah, it's really tough to, that's just your way of life.
Yeah, it is very intimate and very vulnerable. And I'm sure is something most people don't imagine getting to that point, especially at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
But I I mean, a lot of people when they age, when they get older, end up needing things like sponge baths and they can't
Yeah.
bathe independently. And that's very common. But probably most people don't picture that or imagine that before they get to that point. And all of a sudden, you're in this position where it is a vulnerable position, an intimate position, and having someone bathe you, having someone wash your hair, it's not an easy adjustment to make.
Yeah. It's one of those things that can easily make you feel like more of a burden.
Mm-hmm.
And because, you're adding work to someone's day or life or whatever. And you have to think about it in a way like if this person doesn't want to do it, they can say no.
Mm-hmm.
Or like if you're thinking that sometimes I've had those thoughts with my partner, like, what if this is too much for the relationship? What if this is just too much for him and he doesn't want to do it anymore? This isn't what he signed up for. But that's kind of not really true. I feel like if you love someone, really, truly, deeply love someone, you are signing up for that work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a matter of like you seeing yourself as worthy of that kind of love and care. That's really hard to get to.
Yeah, it's something that I think when it comes to this topic does take a lot more strength and courage to be able to say, I need this care. And we all show care to each other in different ways, ways that are tangible and intangible, physical, emotional, and
Hmm.
it can be very difficult when you need a lot of physical care and help from someone to feel that imbalance, even though you
Yeah.
you are also reciprocating care to your partner,
Yeah.
um,
In a different way.
just in different ways and in ways that maybe are harder to see.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think we also get shamed for as disabled people, is being
Needing
shamed.
help.
Yeah, being shamed for needing help, being shamed for being thought of as burdens, for being burdens on our, if we're in a romantic relationship, on our partners or spouses, and
Hmm.
being
Families.
just thought of as lesser and as someone who is not offering anything in return.
Yeah. I know that's something we've both struggled with feeling at different times in our disabled era.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just thinking another aspect of how struggling with your hygiene is so vulnerable. I don't know how to explain it, like how to word it. It's a different kind of intimacy level, I guess. So, like, let me be more specific. It's not just showering or bathing or whatever
Hmm.
that is shamed. If you're not able to shave certain parts of your body, that's shamed.
Hmm.
If you can't take care of your teeth
Hmm.
as well as you need to, that's shamed.
Hmm.
If you can't wear makeup or do your hair, there's so many things. Like,
Yeah.
it's out of your control, and yet you're being made to feel responsible for that, and you're bad for struggling with that.
Hmm.
And it affects your relationships for sure.
Yeah.
Even if you have a partner who doesn't care about that, or doesn't mind those things, or tells you it's fine, you can still worry about it.
Yeah.
Be like subconsciously, I am not attractive enough for my partner, or worry about them thinking that or feeling that way.
Hmm.
Um, Or also just internalizing like I'm not trying hard enough, even if you literally physically cannot do those things anymore
Yeah.
or at all.
Yeah, that reminded me of a few years ago. I'm not sure exactly when, but it was after one of my really big health declines. And I think this was around the time I was still seeking diagnosis. I was pretty much just coming terms with the fact that I couldn't go outside as much. I was struggling more with my mobility and health, and I was really self conscious about that fact. And at the time, I wasn't really open about that with a lot of other people. And I remember something I started doing, even though I couldn't go outside, is I really wanted to do my makeup. Like every day, I wanted to get dressed and do my makeup. And at the time, I was able to do that. And I was also showering more frequently then because I could. I
Mm-hmm.
still had that ability then. Um, and in a way, it did make me feel better on a certain level. But I think a lot of it stemmed from that shame and insecurity that I was becoming somehow like lesser than, or I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
worthy, or I wasn't beautiful anymore. And I think just subconsciously really agonizing over my loss of health and my loss of ability. And I just pushed myself to do that. And now I'm lucky if I get to wear makeup once a week, if that.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely can't shower as often. And am frequently wearing the same clothes for several days in a
Yeah.
row. Maybe I change my underwear or something, but it's the same shirt I've had on
Yeah.
half the week.
I've worn this shirt for so many days now. I can't even tell you how many.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it is really difficult to still feel not even good about yourself, but just okay with yourself
Yeah.
when that happens and when that shift happens and you have those things that change. And I'm hairier now and frequently smellier and often not looking the best or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
probably not willingly wanting to be seen by other people outside of my home. But yeah, it's like even as much as you can get to a place of acceptance or even comfort with that or
Yeah.
acknowledgement in your day to day, it's like it's a struggle for real.
Yeah. It is. And I'm trying to think of what helps or what has helped me
Mm,
kind of cope with those shifts in really losses of different abilities. Yeah, I think it's a lot of trying to change how you talk to yourself, what is deemed as okay or not okay. And it also really helps to talk to someone who gets it. And it can be hard to find that person or those people, you know, but
yeah.
they're out there. Yeah, like I said this in the first episode, but if we hadn't met or become friends, I'd just be way worse off. It helps a lot just to know that someone else is like going through similar things as you and
Mm-hmm.
can make you start to shift your perspective on yourself and that you don't need to meet the standards that society has set in place.
Friendship and kinship is very important with this topic because, and just in general, but it does help having someone else who can tell you that, like you said, they've struggled too, or just that it's okay. And I think it is much easier It's much easier for me to tell you, like, it's okay that
Mm-hmm.
you struggle with that. You don't need to worry so much about that. It's really understandable in your circumstances
Yeah.
that this is what you're going through, and it makes sense, and that's okay. It's just where you're at right now, and that's fine. It's easier to say that to someone else than
Mm-hmm.
it is to yourself. And it, I think, when you practice that sort of acceptance and compassion and kindness with other people, it does get easier to apply to yourself and say, wait a minute. If I'm telling all my disabled friends that it's okay if they couldn't shower this week or ever again, or
Yeah.
if they need help washing their hair, or if they can't shave anymore, like
Yeah.
whatever it is, if I'm telling that to all my disabled or chronically ill friends, why am I so hard on myself for it?
It's kind of like you might not think of it consciously in those moments, but maybe subconsciously it's like you're telling those things to yourself as well. And hopefully you can internalize that and that'll start to push out the internalized shame around those things.
Just making those thoughts around shame a little quieter, less loud
Mm-hmm.
and annoying in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. So I'll say this for if anyone's listening and can relate to not showering like ever. I think I think it's been over a year since I've showered.
Oh,
Like it's been a long ass time.
gotta earn it.
And yeah, the last time it was a lot of work. It took a really big toll on me. And that's when I was like, I can't do this as often as I want to. I need to do sponge baths and did research on that stuff.
Yeah.
But like that's a really hard thing to even tell someone. Like, hey, I haven't showered in over a year. So if anyone listening who has not showered in that amount of time or longer, or maybe not as long, it's been months, weeks, whatever, like you're fine.
Don't feel
It's okay.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really much more common than you think, especially when you get to, like I said, the more severe levels of illness and disability.
Mm-hmm.
The more disabled you are, the more likely that is to happen. The more likely you are to struggle with those sorts of things. And yeah, it's okay. You're not a bad person. You still deserve all the care and support.
Mm-hmm. We did ask our followers on Instagram, what would you tell a friend who's struggling with shame about their disabilities? And we decided to ask this instead of how have you struggled with shame about your disabilities, because like you said, it is easier to be kinder to other people in our situations than it is to ourselves. And yeah, we got some pretty good ones. I think one is almost like verbatim what you said earlier.
Mm,
If my friends were in my position, I wouldn't be shaming them, so why am I shaming me? That's what I try to tell myself anyway, and it somewhat helps, that person said.
yeah. Relate to the somewhat helps because
Yeah, somewhat helps. Not
yeah.
completely, but yeah, very relatable. I think it should be sort of a frequent reminder for when you're struggling. Okay, I'm feeling really shitty about this. Would I think or feel the same way about my friend going through the same thing?
Yeah.
It be a good little shame check.
Definitely.
Yeah. Another one we got is the shame you feel isn't yours. Someone else instilled it. Free yourself from its restraints or constraints. Sorry.
Mm. Yeah, we talked about that too. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's internalized from society, and our society is very ableist and biased and
Mm-hmm.
oppressive. So, whew, why are we holding so much of that? We don't have to hold so much
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah. Don't take their word for it. Their
Right.
word stinks.
Right.
Their word is trash.
You heard it here. Their word is trash.
The general they.
The general they. Society.
Another one is you will never be sick enough to feel you deserve support. Take the support now,
Mm,
which is very true.
so true.
Yeah, I think even in severe illness, there are times where it's hard to let yourself feel like you deserve the support you need.
Yeah.
Yeah, I, I appreciate that response.
Hmm. It's really even as bad as you could get, as sick as you could get. I mean, you could literally be on your deathbed and still be
Mm-hmm.
thinking, I I don't deserve this. Why are people,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of me? It's sad, but
Yeah.
it's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's not something that we're born to carry or feel. Like, it's not a naturally occurring emotion.
No.
It's just placed on us. And yeah, it takes a lot to try to take that off our shoulders as much as we can.
Yeah, and I do think it is a very white supremacist way of thinking and operating. That is part of the
Mm-hmm.
culture of white supremacy, and I would like to think in a lot of cultures, and as much as I've learned about the way other cultures treat illness and death and dying, this is not the it's become the standard, but it is not the standard everywhere, and it
Mm,
has not always been, and it doesn't mean it should stay this way either.
good point. And that might be a good part to mention that the next episode, we will get deeper into that part of shame, like the societal aspect. And I don't know how to describe it. You say it.
Just thinking about, where does all this shame around disability originate from? What are these specific brands of ableism that lead to this kind of shame, that lead to people shaming disabled people in these ways, and sort of turning it back around and reflecting on why our society is this way, and how it really impacts all of us, not just disabled people. This affects non-disabled people too.
Mm-hmm.
Ableism doesn't only hurt disabled people.
Yeah.
So,
And hopefully, discussing and understanding the why more can help us get to a better place about, like, oh, I don't have to feel this way. This is not real. This is not fact. This is where it comes from, and it's bullshit.
and I do not accept it.
Decline.
Yes. Uno reverse. Yeah, definitely. I think it does help to kind of reflect on how we got here, why we are in this place, why society operates this way, and why it's wrong.
Yeah. Why it's fucked up.
Yeah. Well, till next time.
Till next time. Oh, wait, are we going to mention the Patreon?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to talk about it?
We do have our Patreon live now. We got our first sign up, which is really exciting.
Yay.
Shout out to our first subscriber, or not subscriber, patron. That's what it's called.
Patron.
Our first patron. Yeah, we have bonus content over there, bonus episodes. You can get early access to new episodes and other benefits.
Other perks.
Yeah. So if you're interested, check out our Patreon, and you can have a 7-day free trial for both of the tiers that we have.
Yeah, go check it out.
Give us money.
Give us money. This has been From the Sickbed. Thank you for joining us in sickness and solidarity. You can find us at From the Sickbed on Instagram, YouTube, and Substack. Support us by sending us tips on Ko-fi. Take care and talk to you next time.